Well, friends, it's that time, D23 time. For those of you who are not aware, D23 is the massive Disney convention that takes place every other year in Anaheim, California. Movies, TV shows, video games, and most importantly, theme park announcements are made at D23. And Disney did quite a bit this year. Kind of what I expected, but there are some shocking things. But we'll be covering all of it here today. The last D23 had massive announcements on lands coming soon and some attractions coming soon, such as Piston Peak at Magic Kingdom, Avatar's Pandora coming to Disney's California Adventure, and many, many others. Now, I thought that we would just get updates on all these upcoming lands and attractions, and for the most part we did, but we did get a few big announcements that were not, present last time, brand new things. So we'll be covering all that sort of stuff. I will say though, today's video is split into two parts because the first will be entertainment announcements. This channel is called Parks and Popcorn, representing theme parks as well as films and TV shows. So on your screen right now, you can see the timestamps for both film and theme park announcements, as well as each little category, and there should hopefully be chapters on the video on YouTube when you guys are watching. So strap in for a very, very long ride because we're going to be covering all the entertainment announcements, as well as, of course, the most important thing, the theme park announcements. Let's get into it. Now, let's start off the entertainment announcement with Star Wars. Star Wars is in a very rough spot and has been in a very rough spot for an extremely long time. Sure, occasionally we get really good projects from their animation department for the most part, and sometimes some other stuff like Andor, but the whole franchise itself is a humiliating mess in my opinion. Andor was the last really perfect thing that we got, and actually if you want to see my entire review, it's the only full-on TV show that I have reviewed on the channel thus far. The link will be in the description. Star Wars only announced one, new thing and barely gave us a glimpse at their next film, but the big thing that they announced was Ahsoka Season 2. And we got a trailer and a release date, which is cool I guess, but I have a problem with the show. The show really just looks like fan fiction at this point, with all these characters meshed together in a semi-cohesive story. And look, if you enjoy the show, that's great. I personally just don't care at this point, and that sucks for me to say because I really liked Star Wars Rebels. And this is basically Star Wars Rebels Part 2, but live action. And even I have issues with just how the first season was conducted and how this one seems to be going, and I just don't have a lot of faith in Star Wars right now, or really any of their projects, so this really didn't do anything for me. But hey, I could gripe about this for hours, but I'd rather not. We have other things to discuss. Now, the other announcement was for Starfighter, which is the next Disney Star Wars film. We all know that Mando and Grogu got absolutely wrecked at the box office by two indie horror films and a couple of other things, and I think Disney is not extremely confident in Star Wars as a property overall, let alone at the box office. For some reason they showed a teaser at D23, but they didn't give us that teaser online, which really sucked. But hey, at least we got a poster, I guess. I'm still interested in this film. I just wish that we knew something about it going forward, especially since next year is 50 years of Star Wars. They should really be hyping this one up, promoting it a bunch, but they just seem like they don't care to. Now let's talk about the mouse himself, otherwise known as Walt Disney Studios, which they brought us quite a bit of weak announcements, if I'm being honest. Lots of remakes and sequels, which we'll get into, but let's actually start with the only original film that they announced. This film is called Clay. It's an animated original film. It's going to be coming in 2028, starring Kieran Culkin. Not much is really known, but hey, at least we have an original film coming. And I guess speaking of original films, we do have Hexed coming out this year, which I feel like really hasn't been talked about a lot or promoted by Disney at all. A little bit more was revealed here, mostly just that Jodie Foster will be in the film, which is cool. I don't really think this is going to be doing big numbers or great critical success for Disney. I just kind of think this is another one where Disney doesn't seem super duper interested in it, which is bizarre because like they should be. It's an original animated film and they seemingly haven't really promoted it that much. Maybe it's because the first trailer, a lot of people were like, this just kind of looks really generic and, just repetitive nature of a film. But hey, if it's good, then that's great. I hope it does well because we need more original films from every company, not just, smaller filmmakers. Of course, I appreciate that more. But even these big companies like Disney that have the budget to do things like this, they gotta stop depending on remakes and sequels. They got to do the original stuff. Now, Jon Favreau did give us probably my favorite announcement of the night, which was, or at least from Disney that is, which was a look at Oswald, which is a series that I have been wanting for an extremely long time. There have been rumors for a very, very long time that Oswald the Lucky Rabbit would become a part of the Disney family yet again in an animated show. And this show right here combines the animated world and our world together. It'll be a short anthology, only 3 episodes, which kind of sucks, but hey, you know what? I hope it does large numbers on Disney Plus and is just great. I think this is like a big passion project for Jon Favreau, so that's really cool. Now, the last, I guess, original project from Disney that really shocked everybody, including me, was the fact that Kingdom Hearts is getting a series. Now, I am interested in this. I haven't really played the games, but the universe always looked interesting to me and I might get into them at some point, but I really gotta say Disney cannot screw this one up. They've been sitting on the Kingdom Hearts brand and franchise for, I believe now 25 years. I think it's the 25th anniversary of Kingdom Hearts this year. And they are just now realizing, oh, maybe we should do something. Because, this year we got the big announcement that Kingdom Hearts 4 is coming at Nintendo Direct. And of course, they showed us more footage of that game at D23. And then right after that, they followed it up with, hey, we're going to make a Kingdom Hearts series that doesn't follow Sora, but, still set in the universe and everything. And that's great. I hope that they do a really, really good job with the show because they're sitting on $1 billion franchise that they have not cared to milk. And although I don't want them to like milk this thing dry, I think there's a lot of potential that they just, for some reason, have completely overlooked and that fans would really, really love and adore. And even people like me who haven't played the games would probably really love and adore if they did it properly. Now, let's move into the remakes and sequels, starting with Tangled. I am very negative on this one, mostly because every single live action adaptation from Disney has been mediocre at best or just plain awful. The only ones that I actually had a good time with were the ones like Maleficent and Cruella, where they're not really a remake, they're just a live action film set in the universe with a different perspective. That's about the only 2 that really come to mind that I'm like, yeah, I enjoyed that the whole way through. Everything else was just mediocre at best or awful. They usually don't have any color or soul, and usually they just destroy the plot and message of the original. And especially a big problem for me with Tangled is this is one of the very first films that I ever saw in theaters. And now Disney's going to destroy it. So I guess I could go see it in theaters if I wanted to again and see, Disney just rip all of the life away from the film, but I don't think I will. Now, speaking of live action and destroying things, we do have Lilo and Stitch 2, which I really don't understand why we're doing this. This is a terrible idea. The last film got a lot of criticism for destroying the entire central message of Ohana means family. So I don't think that Disney should be touching this franchise again, but of course they're just going to milk it dry because that movie, regardless of negative backlash and all that sort of stuff, it still did make money. Now, another pointless sequel is Ice Age Boiling Point. I really don't know why we're making another one of these. There have been 6 of these films already, and we are now getting the 7th installment in this weirdly just terrible franchise, in my opinion. Like, I don't know what they're doing here. They should have just left it at like the first one. I really don't know what else they could mine from this and say, you know what, that's deserving of a story. Just make some short films with Scratch and you could have the franchise live on in that way, but instead we need another film. Camp Rock 3 as well as Rami and Mitchell 2 were announced. I don't have any opinion on these, but because I've just never seen them and I just don't care. But you guys tell me if this is a good move or a bad move. And also Princess Diaries 3 was announced, which another one I haven't seen the previous films. I'm not exactly surprised that this one was announced just because, Anne Hathaway has had a massive, massive year. The entire year. I think she has 5 or 6 films that have come out this year or are coming out by the end of the year. So I'm not really surprised that they're trying to cash in on that right now because she is, of course, a very talented actress. And Disney also likes to go back to these classics and just mine them to death. Speaking of classics, we do have the new Simpsons movie, which I will say this could be really fun, but I also got to ask the question of when was the last time you actually watched anything new from The Simpsons? I think that this franchise has been really just forgotten, and the, golden age of like the 90s and early 2000s is what, people remember from the show. The good times, the good episodes. And I love those episodes. I love the earlier seasons, but I don't think that really Simpsons has been major in the cultural zeitgeist. I guess you could make the argument of when Disney first got Fox and they were, using Homer and all of them, in those short films, they kind of gained some notoriety. And I guess, Disney does own a stake of Epic Games and Fortnite, and they've thrown them into Fortnite. So that's another way that they've been in the cultural zeitgeist. But like aside from that, in their actual show, it's not really relevant. I really hope that the show ends soon. And, this could be a good, fun movie, but I just don't know where the interest is. Now, speaking of TV show to movie, we did get the Bluey movie, which I can already guarantee you is going to make probably 1.5 billion at the box office because this is just a massive franchise that Disney has, and I'm not surprised that they're making the film. I don't really care about it. I've never seen Bluey. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I probably won't watch it, but hey, I'm sure fans are going to love it. So that's great. Now, the final 2 Disney announcements were sequels, Zootopia 3 and Frozen 3. Now, if you had told me back in 2016 that both Frozen and Zootopia would be billion-dollar franchises that would continue 10 years later, I would have said that you're crazy. But then again, here we are with 10 years after the fact, more of these movies, making them trilogies now, and I'm sure it's not going to end here. I'll start off by saying that Frozen 3 could be good, or it could be a complete waste of a film, and that's kind of how I feel about a lot of these sequels from Disney. The animation, of course, looks incredible, the lighting and all that, but of course it would. It's Disney. They try not, for the most part, to cut corners. But the other thing I have to ask is, like, what else is there to do? Now, the premise does seem a little funny to me and odd because it's about an evil snow queen that crashes Anna and Kristoff's wedding, which, for those of you who don't know, the film originally was going to have Elsa be evil, just like in the fairy tale that the film is adapted from. That was changed at the last minute, I believe, and now Elsa's just like famous Disney princess. But here we are 10 years later, actually over 10 years later, I guess, with this film by the time it comes out, and we're gonna have evil Snow Queen against Anna and Elsa. I can already very confidently predict right now that this is their long lost sister or cousin or aunt, something like that. This person's going to be related to them, and I wouldn't really be surprised if in the end of the film she's not evil, because Disney does not make truly evil villains anymore, which really sucks. When it comes to Zootopia 3, I actually am optimistic because the first film was great. When the second film was announced and came out, I didn't really care. I was like, oh, why are we making another sequel? And then the movie started making an insane amount of money, and people were like, this is a movie that I didn't have expectations for, but I absolutely loved. So me and my college friends went off to go see the movie, and we had an absolute blast. Zootopia 2 was a very good film, like a good sequel. And it did stuff that I was like, yeah, I guess there is more to do in this universe. So I am completely open and excited for a third film. I hope that, it can have the same level of storytelling and quality animation and all that as the first 2 films, because if this one is also like a home run, then that would be great. Like, these movies do have potential to do a lot of fun stuff. They're always funny. They always have interesting, insightful uh, concepts in their stories that are, hit pretty hard and like are great to kind of observe on a deeper level, which isn't really something that I would think from any Disney movie necessarily, or at least most of the modern ones, but these films do exceptionally well in a lot of different areas for me. Now let's move on to one of my favorites, Pixar. Now, we all love Pixar, and I gotta say, I do have pretty high hopes for what Pixar is about to do over the next few years. This year we got Toy Story 5 and I enjoyed it quite a bit. And, when it was announced, I was like, why are we doing another? But hey, those movies keep on hitting pretty good, so that's great. I haven't seen Hoppers yet, but Pixar has been doing pretty good lately. And first thing from D23 was we got a better look at Gato. And I have been very, very excited about this film. The animation just looks incredible. We don't really know like a whole lot about the story, but we know like kind of bits and pieces, and I'm excited. I'll be watching this like opening weekend. I'm just very excited because mainly the art style and the director's track record, so I think it will be great. Now, the next big thing was actually another original Pixar film, which I am very happy about because I think Pixar should have more original films than sequels. There was that era where they kind of just went sequel after sequel after sequel, and I'm happy that they're getting back into the original films, even though it was a little bit rough, in the 2020s, like early 2020s, and I guess to like, I don't know, 2023 or 2024, you could say, was like kind of rough patch of up and down for Pixar. But hey, now we have some interesting looking original films, and the new one, Ghost Market, is no exception. Ghost Market was announced. It looks to be just a fun, comedic, supernatural film. It looks great. Let's talk about the one announcement that I am not actually excited about at all, which is Coco 2. First of all, I don't know why we're making this sequel. I really don't. I love Coco. Coco is one of my favorite Pixar films of all time. I am just beyond confused of why we are making a Coco 2. Miguel has an interesting design, I will say that. I was satisfied by the first film. It was great, but now this new premise kind of seems lazy. I will say though, if they can somehow pull this premise off, I will be very happy. I'm very nervous about the film, not exactly thrilled. Especially when you're telling us that Ernesto de la Cruz is back. I don't know why we're bringing him back, but you know what, whatever. We'll see what happens with the film. It could be another great film. It could be another one of my favorite Pixar films of all time, especially since I love the first one so much, but I don't really have that hope. Now, the next Disney Pixar film sequel and the final announcement from Pixar is something that I am cautiously optimistic about, but I just love these movies so much. So it's The Incredibles 3. Of course, I'm excited about it. Of course, I'm happy to see more Incredibles. The original Incredibles is my absolute favorite Pixar film of all time. I used to watch this film on repeat. The second one is very good. I haven't seen it in a while, but I do remember I had issues with it, a few issues, but overall it was a very good and satisfying sequel. These films are just so great, and I think that the characters and the stories that they come up with are just so interesting. There's so much to explore with these characters, so I'm always excited when there is talk of a new film. And when it comes to the third film, I am excited, but I am a little concerned. After D23 and, this weekend's panel and everything, and them showcasing it, I'm a little bit more confident in it. But when they had announced it way back when, I was like, oh, we're doing another one, like, yay. And oh, I don't know about that, especially since Brad Bird is not even directing. Now, he is writing and producing the film, but he's not directing the film. Instead, we have Peter Sohn directing, and you might be wondering, who is that? What has he directed? Well, guys, he directed The Good Dinosaur and Elemental. Now, I never saw Elemental, but I didn't hear a lot of like amazing things about it. I heard that it was just kind of average, if less than average, and we all know that The Good Dinosaur was a complete mess. Pixar's worst film by a long shot is The Good Dinosaur. Now, to be fair to the director, Sohn was, in charge of The Good Dinosaur after everything went to crap. If you know about it, The Good Dinosaur was just a total mess of a film. I believe like the entire crew just got fired, and Sohn sadly had to inherit that mess and make the best with the disaster that was handed over to him. So I can't blame him too much about that one. But still, not a great track record to bring you in for The Incredibles 3. Now, for the most part, it does actually seem interesting. Pete Docter gave us insight on the plot, saying, quote, "They want to prove," they being the kids, "that they are ready to be real supers, and their parents aren't quite so convinced. So they've been sneaking out at night to protect the city. It doesn't go over so well at home. To make matters worse, they are also struggling to contain Jack Jack. A new threat is taking a heavy toll on Bob, who's grappling with his own relevance in a world full of supers that may have outgrown him. Because even though supers are legal again, that doesn't mean that all supers are good." Now, I will say the premise of not all supers being good is a very, very compelling point, and especially for Bob to struggle with. Now, what I do want to happen here is a bigger role for my favorite character in the entire series, which is Frozone. This guy is the best in the entire series, and for some reason these films haven't made him a big character. I was really, really hoping that for the third film they would make him the central focus, but making the kids the central focus, that's good. It can work, it can be interesting, but honestly, our second plot here seems a little bit more interesting to me. Now, if we're gonna have Bob be a big part of it, I think that Elastigirl and Frozone shouldn't be sidelined. I think it would be great if we could get the trio working together, Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, and Frozone, with are the supers good? Are they bad? Dealing with bad supers, that sort of deal. And then have this other plot of the kids trying to prove themselves. I think that this movie could really work, but I'm still a little on the fence. Like, yeah, of course I'm going to be excited, but I am also cautiously excited and optimistic because I'm just a little bit concerned here. But usually these films do really great. They just work for me. They just do. Even despite their flaws in the second one, they still work at the end of the day. The animation is just incredible. The style that Brad Bird, brings is just incredible, which even without him directing, I hope that translates over again, but we shall see. Now let's move over to Marvel. I gotta say, Marvel had better announcements here at D23 than in Comic-Con, in my opinion. First of all, we got Vision Quest, which I am a bit confused why, of all the shows the MCU is doing, this one has continued and just pushed through. I'm not exactly opposed to it. I'm just like, why did they, make a big deal of like, let's cancel all these different shows and then not cancel Vision Quest? Maybe it'll be great, maybe it won't, I don't know. But hey, we got Vision Quest. We have Ultron and Vision back. It could be interesting. A lot of people at Marvel are very, very excited about this film, and I think this show, and I think some other people who have gotten like plot leaks and everything have been very, very excited and saying this one's going to be a real good one. So maybe it'll be great. The other big thing that Marvel did was we got another look at Avengers Doomsday. This trailer was much better than the first trailer. It has me more interested and hyped up for the movie. Doom seems like he will be a well-built character and not just shoehorned in. I do still have, concerns about it, but overall I'm getting more and more excited about this film. Like, it seems like it could be really, really fun. Now, the big and final announcement was our cast for the X-Men. 2028, we will actually have a new X-Men film in the MCU, Ghost Rider movie, as well as Black Panther 3. 2028 is going to be a crazy year for Marvel, and I'm extremely excited about a mutant-centric MCU going forward. And our cast for the X-Men so far is very, very compelling. So far, we knew about Samara Weaving as Emma Frost, and spoilers for Spider-Man Brand New Day, skip ahead if you don't want them, Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. But then we got the announcements of Kit Connor as Cyclops, Christopher Abbott as Professor X, Maya Bond as Storm, Indy Navarrete as Rogue, and best of all, Adam Driver as Mr. Sinister. So far, this seems to be an incredible cast to me, and just awesome characters for a new and fresh X-Men roster. Now that we went over all the entertainment announcements, let's dive into the park announcements. And as we go along, we will start with the Disney cruises, then go to the international parks, and then we will end with the parks in America. Let's begin. Now, before we actually do the Disney cruises, let's actually talk about the one film announcement from the parks panel, which was season 2 for the Imagineering story coming in 2028. I'm really excited about this. Season 1 was just such an incredibly well-made show. Leslie Iwerks did a phenomenal job. She also has this film, World Builders, coming out pretty soon, I think like this week. So go check it out. I'll be checking it out. But season 2 of the Imagineering story sounds great. Now, the Disney cruise is something that I've never experienced. I've never been on a cruise in my life, let alone a Disney cruise. We got an announcement of the Disney Believe having Moana, Woody, Buzz, and Tinkerbell on board the boat, being a part of the ship itself, which is cool. We also got a teaser for a new fleet coming to the Disney cruises in 2029. This is said to be the in-between fleet, priced presumably higher than the classic, but less than the Wish ships. So that's cool. I'm not really knowledgeable on the Disney cruises, so I started off here, and if you guys have comments on it, concerns, questions, if you guys want to correct me on some stuff or point me in a great place to educate myself on these things, that'd be great. I'll probably go look up some videos about them, but I just never, grew up with these. I never experienced them. I never really looked into these, unlike me looking into the international parks. This is a big blind spot for me. It's not that I don't like these, it's just I don't really care because I don't have like a huge attachment. But hey, it seems like these were pretty good announcements for people. Disney cruise announcements always go big at D23 because it's a massive money maker for Disney, and I'm sure they're a blast. Maybe someday I'll experience them. But let's go to the international parks. Now, looking at all the international parks, we actually got some real good announcements. The first announcement outside of the parks in the US was for the original Space Mountain at Disneyland Paris. This announcement caught me by major surprise because, for one, the attraction has been defunct since 2003, and for another, I listened to the For Your Amusement podcast, and they predicted this one to happen, and I really didn't think it was going to happen. I don't even think they were like 100% confident. I think they just kind of threw it out there and were like, oh, there's some rumors, we'd love to see this. And wow, their D23 prediction came true, which was really, really cool. In 2005, the ride did reopen at Paris as Space Mountain Mission 2, and then eventually Space Mountain became Hyperspace Mountain in Disneyland Paris, which isn't really anybody's favorite ride. Space Mountain in Paris has a different ride system and layout that lends itself to a more original and distinct ride. Seeing it return to its original iteration is really, really cool to me. Now, right after this announcement, we got the great news of Space Mountain Earthrise. Earthrise is a brand new iteration of Space Mountain in Tokyo Disneyland, and the ride looks phenomenal and very interesting. The exterior looks really just unique and incredible, and the focus on Earth for a ride set in space is intriguing. It's focusing on the future of space travel and stuff, as well as, Earth. And it's said to be like a somewhat emotional ride. I'm wondering what they're really doing here, and this just has a lot of potential to just be an instant classic and just another incredible ride. I love space. I love Space Mountain, so getting another iteration is just great to me. Now, after the Space Mountain announcements, we did get Marvel announcements for the international parks, starting off with the Avengers Pavilion being upgraded at Hong Kong Disneyland. There seems to be a focus on Stark Industry here, which is pretty cool. I don't know too much about Hong Kong Disneyland overall. It's one of my blind spots too, but hey, more Stark stuff. I believe this is the park with Iron Man stuff. I'm just kind of saying that off the dome. I might be completely wrong that there's the Iron Man Star Tours sort of ride. I could be wrong, but I believe that's where this is. That's why Stark Industries. But moving on from Marvel overseas, we have Shanghai Disneyland getting a whole entire Spider-Man land. The whole land is dedicated to Spider-Man with a roller coaster featuring Spidey and the Spidey bots. If I remember correctly, we are getting a sort of Tower of Terror dropper with Spider-Man that was announced last year and for some reason not talked about at all, either here or at one of the Tokyo parks, but I think it was in Shanghai. It would make more sense for Shanghai, especially with a whole Spider-Man centric land. Now, the final two announcements for the international parks took place at both Paris and Tokyo. Disney Adventure World at Disneyland's Paris will feature the first ever Lion King ride. This ride is a log flume ride similar to Tiana's Bayou Adventure at Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom. The ride is thankfully based off the original Lion King, the animated film, not the live action one. Now, this ride looks really cool, really fun, just, a good retelling of the original film. Hopefully, someday I will make it out to Paris in general and also to Disneyland Paris and ride this ride. The final announcement overseas is one that kind of took me by total surprise. We got news of Sugar Rush Sweet Rescue at Tokyo Disneyland. This will be located in Tomorrowland and seems to be a ride that will benefit the massive e-ticket attraction of Space Mountain Earthrise. The ride is a shooter ride, much like Astro Blasters, but apparently has some really solid animatronics. Now let's look at our parks here in the States, starting at the very beginning with the Carousel of Progress. The Carousel of Progress is something that was at the forefront of the panel. The whole theme seemed to revolve around animatronics, the Carousel of Progress, and a better tomorrow, which that last part we'll get into much later on. Now, the big updates for Carousel Progress is that we got to see a bit of the already described show scene set in the 1980s on Halloween night. And we also got the voice actors announced for the attraction, being Jamie Lee Curtis as Mother, and the father will be voiced by Bryan Cranston. I personally think that these choices work extremely well. The attraction is set to open late spring 2027, which is nice that we got a release date for this one. Now, moving right along, we go to Disneyland, and we get two brief announcements for both Remember Dreams Come True and the original World of Color returning in 2027. Both of these are huge fan favorites, so it's great to see them coming back. After this, we will move over to Epcot, and we get an announcement that I am a bit concerned about. That is, Spaceship Earth will be getting an update, which is a great idea. However, my concern comes from the fact that way back in 2019, we got this exact announcement. Now, some of it was a little bit different in like detailing and everything, but that announcement never came to be with a lot of the other Epcot announcements we got at that D23, such as the Play Pavilion and Mary Poppins attraction. So I hope that the new Spaceship Earth actually does happen. It'd be great. The story is set to focus on human connection instead of human communication, and I think this ride has definitely needed an update for many, many years. I was really sad when they just kind of totally abandoned the last one, although the last one, if I'm remembering correctly, was a little bit of a stranger concept. I would have to go back and review it. You guys can let me know if it was that bad. Also, you guys can let me know. I'm now kind of second guessing if it was a D23 that this stuff was all announced at, or was it the investors thing during COVID? But anyway, it was announced in 2019-2020 era with all this other stuff and just never came to be, but hey, maybe they'll actually commit to it. Now, going over to the Animal Kingdom, we did get the announcement that took me by a lot of surprise that the Yeti from Expedition Everest would be reworked and fixed. Now, the big question then becomes, how does this actually happen? We had heard for years and years that this would be a very almost impossible, a very hard task, almost impossible task to fix the Yeti, because it seems like it would have to, be like a whole reconstruction of the entire attraction because of how the Yeti is designed. And if you're unaware, the Yeti ended up like cracking some of the steel framing due to the mechanics and heavy movement that the Yeti was supposed to have. The effects of the Yeti were extremely short-lived and died out pretty fast, and caused a lot of issues for the ride, structurally speaking. So I'm wondering how they're actually going to get in there and fix this guy and make it work. But hey, if they can make it work, that would be amazing. Now, heading back to Disneyland, we did get updates for Avengers Campus over at California Adventure. Both Avengers Infinity Defense and Stark Flight Labs will open in 2028, which is actually great. We did get that release date, and seeing it so soon, it's only 2 years away, like that's really good news. We also did get the news that Jeremy Renner, Chris Hemsworth, Robert Downey Jr., Anthony Mackie, and Brie Larson will reprise their roles for both attractions, and with Robert Downey Jr., he will be coming back as Iron Man. We did get a look at Infinity Defense, and we can see that there are some cool practical sets being built, some very massive practical sets being built, but we all know that this ride is going to have a heavy amount of screens. It's kind of reminding me of, your typical Universal ride, kind of like Transformers, or maybe even like the Spider-Man ride, where there's like a lot of practical stuff, but also there's a lot of screen elements. I hope that this ride is pulled off in an incredible way. Like it kind of has to hit now as like one of the best e-ticket attractions, just because of how long this thing has been teased out, how many delays it's gone through, how many like sort of changes it has gone through. But we'll see if this is a great ride. And also Stark Flight Labs seems like interesting. I've heard it's like a sort of Kuka arm system, so that's really cool. It's a smaller ride, sitting there, but hey, another ride to fill the land is great, because that land will then have 3 attractions, and the more there, the better, especially with Avengers Campus, because for all being honest, it does look a little bit bleak most of the time. Now, moving on to one of my most anticipated announcements, or really just updates, is the Tropical Americas at Disney's Animal Kingdom. We got a lot of details on Indiana Jones and the Myth of the Jade Serpent. That was the title that we were given, and the ride, of course, was announced at the last D23, but now we actually do have more details, such as the title, the fact that Harrison Ford himself is a part of this ride, allowing Disney to model the animatronic after him and use his voice, which is a big thing. If you didn't know, in all the other iterations of Indiana Jones, like Forbidden Journey, you don't actually have Harrison there. It's somebody else. I can't actually remember off the top of my head who they modeled the Indiana Jones model after and what voice they use, but it's not Harrison Ford. So having Harrison Ford on board is pretty cool. I'm guessing they paid him a large sum of money, and hey, hopefully he's satisfied with the ride, because that would be a pretty great signal to all of us. The ride itself does look intriguing. It seems interesting. I've already been excited about the ride, but now getting the story details, I'm even more excited, because Indy will be visiting this Mayan temple, discover the underworld. This massive serpent known as Tuscan, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Tuscan, guards the underworld. So we're going to go to the underworld, which is very interesting mythological stuff that Indiana Jones kind of rarely gets into, or I guess not rarely, but at least in this sort of way, I don't think we've really gotten to see this extreme supernatural where we're actually going to like mythological realms. Like the closest I guess we got was Dial of Destiny with time travel, and of course the iconic Raiders of the Lost Ark is built on Abrahamic religions like Christianity, but you don't actually go to like a mythological realm. It's just like opening the ark and all of that ensues. So I think this is a really cool concept. I hope that the ride system is different than the Indiana Jones in Disneyland, just because it would be nice to have that variety. From a lot of the things I'm hearing, it seems like it's going to have basically the same track layout as Dinosaur. It doesn't really seem like they're changing that a whole lot. It feels like they're going to use a lot of the elements of Dinosaur just with Indy, which I'm fine with. I think that's great. I don't really care if we're reusing the Dinosaur track and those show elements. It can work pretty well, but I am a little bit like, hey, I hope it's not too similar to the other one, because it's always nice to have variety on each coast for the different parks. Now, the other ride is the Encanto ride, titled Antonio's Fiesta de Encanto, which was shown a bit more here, and it seems to be a family ride. Some people are saying this could be a trackless dark ride. It's highly plausible that this is the case, which could be cool. I have my opinions on trackless dark rides and trackless systems. We're not going to really get into them here, but I'll probably make a video sometime soon-ish talking about the different ride systems and the pros and cons, but trackless could work here. Now, it is said that this will have a wide variety of animals. I'm really hoping a lot of these are animatronics. I know that there was like a capybara on the grounds in the pavilion that you could see, but having more animatronic animals would be incredible, because it's one thing if we have screens, which I'm sure this is going to use quite a bit of screens, but if it was something like Tiana's Bayou Adventure, or really like Splash Mountain, or it's like a million different animals thrown in there, that would just be great. We've also heard that the scale of this ride is supposed to be quite massive. I believe we like start in the rainforest. I haven't seen Encanto in a while, so I might need to watch it to refresh my memory, but I remember like each of the rooms is like almost like a magical portal in a weird way to like a whole new world that like kind of revolves around the character. And I do believe that Antonio did have the whole like rainforest thing. I know he could like talk to the animals and understand. So I think this could be a very fun ride. I think it's great that we're getting this and Indy in the same land, two massive e-tickets. And of course, it's worth mentioning that we do have that carousel coming through and the models look great. I'm not really like a huge carousel guy, but if I was at Animal Kingdom, I would definitely get on this carousel when it opens because it just looks really well crafted and just so fun. And of course, carousels are great for kinetic energy in the park. So I think Tropical Americas will probably become one of my absolute favorite lands if they can execute it properly. Now, heading back to Disney's California Adventure, we actually got a sort of look at the new Coco boat ride that was announced at the last D23. I am still quite excited about this one, but the update wasn't huge. The update was almost just small or very minimal. The ride was announced last time, like most of these rides and attractions or lands, but this time around, all we really got is that it will be set 1 year after the film, sort of before the next film. So it's like a middle piece. We will be crossing over to the Land of the Dead, just like in the film. And the queue seems to have like Hector's music and it be like a little museum of that. So that's really fun. We didn't get a release date, not really any details here, just a very, very brief update, but at least they are still prioritizing this ride. Now, moving back to Disney World's Magic Kingdom, we got arguably the best update and announcement of the night, which was more details on Piston Peak, the brand new Cars land that is taking over the rivers of America. At the last D23 when this was announced, a lot of people seemed excited until a few days later when they had realized that it would take over the rivers of America, much like how we learned days later that Muppet Vision 3D and Muppet Courtyard would be ripped away from us for Monstropolis. This land for Cars Land, Piston Peak, has been quite a big mystery for me and many others just because of the placement of the land as well as the material itself. You know, cars are quite loud and this is at a very odd central place in the park, and it's hard to envision the land from the Cars films and what we've seen in the parks implemented in this terrain and actually work well. I'm happy to say that I am quite excited about this. The updates that they gave us this time around and the little model that has been circulating online, like the little videos and photos of that, have got me very confident that Disney actually knows what they're doing. Now, I still do find it a bit weird that we're doing Cars Land, but hey, this thing is looking to be an incredible land. For starters, this is of course not the same as the Radiator Springs at Disneyland's Cars Land. Of course it wouldn't be. It's Piston Peak. This really feels like national parks. It seems to be heavily modeled after the national parks, based on the national park environment. I think that the world building they're doing here is great. We already know that Disney can really pull off the national parks in an incredibly themed way. One of my absolute favorite places in all the parks is Condor Flats with Soarin' and Grizzly River Run and, you know, like the Redwood Trails at Disney's California Adventure. It is just such a marvelously done environment, and this seems to be blending a lot of the different elements of the national parks throughout, you know, America into one actually cohesive ride and land. And the ride itself, Ridge Runners, is something that we'll get into in a little bit here, but it's interconnected. It's like all across the land. It's a big track and it's going through all the different terrains and making the land feel very tied together, which is great. Now, the first attraction that they did tell us about was this one called Miss Fritter's Daredevil Spin-Along, which is just like Mater's Junkyard Jamboree, which is great. The concept of that type of ride fits very, very well with this part of, you know, Cars 3. I think that, you know, the whole Miss Fritter thing is very memorable in Cars 3. It's one of the most memorable parts of Cars 3. So I think that this ride system, a massive Miss Fritter, animatronic bus is just great. I think it'll be a fun little addition. I like Mater's Junkyard Jamboree. It's an enjoyable ride, so this will probably be as enjoyable, if not more so enjoyable, just because of the massive animatronic in the middle. And of course, the big e-ticket attraction is looking incredible. Like I just talked about, Ridge Run Rally. It has so many different environments, like I guess biomes, you could say, like different sorts of terrains that are being implemented here. We have heard a lot that a lot of the appeal of the ride is you're going to be able to feel those terrains when you're on them. You know, the Radiator Springs Racers is a very smooth ride. Same with Test Track. They're very smooth. This is going to have you really feel the terrain. And I think that is a very wise move. And I think it's going to make for an extremely thrilling and exciting ride, especially at, you know, for Disney level of thrills. I don't know if it's going to be the most pleasant to ride on. I'm sure they'll still make it, you know, pleasant enough and not like some evil Six Flags Magic Mountain contraption, or really any Six Flags park contraption where you're sitting there and you think you're going to break your neck. I think this is going to be like an enjoyable but kind of rough ride, and I'm here for that. Now, one thing I don't think I've seen anybody point out is that this ride in particular and the entire land itself does remind me a lot of Nature's Wonderland. I don't know if the Imagineers drew any sort of inspiration from Nature's Wonderland, but to me this looks very Nature's Wonderland-esque in a weird way. It's like almost a spiritual successor, but with more thrill. If you guys don't know, Nature's Wonderland is one of these like very classic Disney attractions that didn't last for a super long time and had a lot of little, you know, types of terrain. I don't think it had snow or anything like that, but it was just like a very peaceful sort of ride, and you went through some terrains that seem like they're being fit here with the Ridge Run Rally in the entire Piston Peak area. I think the whole land's going to be great. It seems like a spiritual successor of Nature's Wonderland, which is awesome. And, you know, Disney, like I already said, can do national parks pretty dang well. So it seems like it's going to be just a great time, and they're actually improving this land far more than any of us ever thought they would. They didn't give us a release date, but if I had to say, I would guess late 2028 or maybe summer 2028. I don't know. If it's in 2029, then that's going to kind of suck, because why announce these things so far ahead of time? But we'll see when it opens. Now, moving on over to Disney's Hollywood Studios, we did get updates on Monstropolis. We got the reveal that Harryhausen's will be a restaurant with an animatronic of Harry making sushi. Pretty interesting and darkly comedic. There will also be a pizza restaurant and a theater show in the Glob Theater, where Mike and Sully introduce us to the land. And it actually seems, based off of this concept art, that Mike and Sully's college friends from Monsters University will be here, which I think is a very fun callback and just an enjoyable way to bring these guys back. So that's kind of nice. There will also be an alumni center for Monsters University, which seems to be like a sort of museum, and also just, you know, offer a bunch of Monsters University merch. We all know that Monsters University sold insane amounts of merch, whether you loved the movie or didn't like it. It was a very successful thing for Disney, so I'm not surprised that they're incorporating it in an interesting enough way here. I am actually kind of happy to see their college buddies coming back. I hope that they go through with that and that doesn't just stay in the concept art, because those guys are a pretty enjoyable part of that film. Now, the big thing here would be the door coaster. Now, we did learn that the door coaster will launch us up, or lift us off the ground in 4 seconds and launch us. So that's pretty crazy. And I believe it's 40 feet in the air. Now, not much else was said about this land, which kind of sucks, except for the fact that it is opening in 2027. We don't know when, but the door coaster itself will not open with the land, which I think is a very terrible idea. This kind of reminds me of Galaxy's Edge when they had opened, you know, half the land, or Avengers Campus when they will open up the land with one attraction and then, you know, the big e-ticket is on the way. However, this time around it's a little bit worse, because you don't even have an attraction, you just have a show. I mean, I guess that is an attraction. You don't have a ride though. So I get it kind of if they have to open it just to, like, you know, filter people through the park, but I think it kind of sucks. I think they should just wait it out a little bit more until the door coaster is completed. Now, the last big announcement of the night, or I guess update, was Villains Land. Now, we already knew that there was going to be a dark, villain sort of land last time at D23. They didn't give us the name, and this time they just were like, what else were we going to call it? We're just going to call it Villains Land, which is fine. We're getting 2 massive e-ticket attractions that were showcased at the panel. One of which is an e-ticket Maleficent coaster, which I seriously hope is actually thrilling and pushes Disney to not make a like kiddie coaster, but something on the level of like, oh, I don't know, Velocicoaster or something that you would find at like a Six Flags, because this is Villains Land. It's probably not going to be little Jimmy who's 5 years old walking in. It's probably going to be for more adventurous kids and more, I don't want to say adults, but like teens, I guess, like preteens, like not little kids. So I think having a high level roller coaster that is actually extremely thrilling and pushes Disney to, engineer more daunting rides would be great here, especially if they can pull off the architecture, because this is, an outdoor coaster, and this is kind of relying heavily on the land's architecture. But I can already see that this is going to be probably an incredible coaster to ride at night, especially if they just pull off everything, because the next ride is an e-ticket boat ride, which has us riding along and seeing not every, but a lot of the villains in one spot. It looks like we're going to get Cruella de Vil, Dr. Facilier, Maleficent, and many others. I did appreciate that Cruella de Vil, Dr. Facilier, and the Evil Queen were like the 3 sort of main villains, despite Maleficent's castle being a thing and being also a massive e-ticket. I love that Facilier is getting his own little thing. I think we're also getting some Scar in there, which would be cool. Many people are speculating that this will follow Shanghai Disneyland's Pirates dark ride format for their boat ride over here. And if that is the case, then that would be incredible, like really incredible and just amazing. So I'm very excited about this land. I'm waiting for even more details. Of course, we didn't get an announcement of a release date for the land, but if I could guess, I would say 2030 or mid 2029. They have said that this land is the most ambitious thing that they have done to date, which I don't doubt them for a second on that. Even though something like Pandora or Galaxy's Edge was massive, this seems to be pretty ambitious. Like, it's the same amount of acreage and scale as Galaxy's Edge. So, we're just updating the technology a little bit more, probably adding more intricacies and theming, and they probably learned some of the, right lessons from their mistakes with Galaxy's Edge and some other stuff. So I think that this is the biggest challenge that they got. So hopefully this thing can be pulled off well, but I don't think we're going to see it until 2030 or 2029. Is a little sad, but man, if they release it all at once, both rides, all the restaurants and gift shops all at once, like a true land should open, and it hits, then I think Disney will have a massive success on their hand, which really hasn't been the case for a couple of years, because Universal has been killing them in the game of virtually everything. Now, before we get to the final 2 announcements, I do want to point out that Abu Dhabi did get a very, very brief mention with 0 applause, none whatsoever, rightfully so, which this is really worth mentioning, because I don't think that Disney still realizes how many of the fans are upset about this thing. Maybe they do now, I don't know. They probably look at the social media, but this park is just a terrible idea. I haven't made another video since, they announced it, but even back then I was like, this is interesting technologically, but, concerning human rights violations with labor laws over there, and the fact that there's always wars going on, and the fact that also a missile almost hit Warner Brothers Park, I think this is an extremely stupid idea to build in Abu Dhabi. Like, I really wish Disney would just pull out of the deal, go build in the UK or Canada or Mexico, like literally anywhere else except for Abu Dhabi. It's such a terrible look for the company. It's really, really bad. So I'm actually happy that they didn't really focus on it too much and that nobody reacted positively to that. Now, another brief mention, which kind of had me sad, but I also kind of expected going in, was that Pandora will be coming to California Adventure, but that's all that we got. Now, I am happy that Pandora is still happening. I think that a completely new Avatar Land Pandora at California Adventure that isn't like the one in Animal Kingdom will be incredible. The models that I saw from the little, videos and photos of influencers that they had at the Horizons, pavilions and everything at D23 looked absolutely amazing. We got two incredibly huge announcements that were made but not expanded upon in any way, shape, or form. We got the greatest announcement that all of us parks fans have been waiting decades for, which is that Disneyland's Tomorrowland will be getting a full rework with new rides and attractions. Now, seemingly this is for Disneyland's 75th anniversary, which would be really cool. They just had their 70th. This year was 71. So if they could get it done, or at least like half of it done by 75, which is just 4 years from now, that would be incredible. I don't think they announced really any details whatsoever, just because I think it's one of those things that they're like, we've been blue skying this and thinking of ideas, but we don't have anything written down. I will be making a video going fully in depth about what I think will stay and what will go and what the big changes will be for this new Tomorrowland, but I am very happy about this announcement and that this is supposed to be a look toward the future, a true look toward the future. And it seems like the aesthetic and the architecture will be very much like what Walt had envisioned all those years ago for Tomorrowland and what Tomorrowland kind of originally looked like when it was opened way back when. The big final announcement that they threw out right after Tomorrowland was the fact that Dreamfinder and Figment shall return to Epcot. Yeah, Journey into Imagination is coming back to seemingly the original form with a either completely original form or a slightly newer and updated form, just with, Figment and Dreamfinder yet again, which is incredible. I think that this announcement took me by an insane amount of surprise. I was already shocked by the Tomorrowland announcement and just so happy, just jumping for joy. And then this thing hits and I was like, there's no way they just announced this. I was shocked. And of course they abruptly ended it with no actual details or release date, because much like the new Tomorrowland, I'm thinking that they're probably just blue skying ideas. But I think that this is a good direction for Disney and Disney Imagineering, because this is stuff that doesn't really benefit investors in my opinion. And I feel like sometimes Disney makes, or really honestly a lot of the time, Disney makes their decisions based off of their investors and not the fans. The new Tomorrowland could potentially benefit an investor, but it's going to take a lot of money and a lot of time, and Dreamfinder and Figment doesn't really benefit your typical investor at the immediate moment, opposed to something like Galaxy's Edge. But I think both of these in the long run will just please Disney fans if they can actually, execute it. So that's my D23 recap. Overall, I had the expectation that this D23 would just be updates upon updates upon updates of what last year had announced. And it's nice that we got the Yeti, Disneyland Tomorrowland, Figment, and even, something like Earthrise, Space Mountain Earthrise, all great announcements, but they were all very brief, I guess except for Earthrise. But, I'm sure in 2028 at D23, we're going to have a lot more updates on all these things and hopefully release dates on the lands that won't be completed by then. Because honestly, by 2028, I still think half of the things that they just gave us updates on won't even be finished, which kind of sucks. But hey, that's my thoughts on D23. However, there is one thing that I actually do want to just talk about a little bit more for D23, which is we didn't get any announcement or talk about Disneyland Forward. I think this is insane. Disneyland Forward has been going on as a project for a very long time and has been teased out for an extremely long time. The project needs to happen. We are so unclear about what's going on with it, if things are even approved. I think things are approved, but what is Disney trying to plan here? And the fact that there wasn't even a throwaway line about Disneyland Forward has me in a very not great, thought process about this. I don't think that it's going well. I hope it is, but I hope that Disney just didn't fully give up on this thing. Now, that will be all for today's video, friends. I do want to say, though, that on Sunday, you guys should be expecting a Country Bears movie review, kind of like the one that we did for Mr. Toad's Wild Ride or The Wind in the Willows, that same type of format. And Wednesday, you guys can expect a smaller video where I actually do theorize about New Tomorrowland at Disneyland, because oh boy, I'm going to be making a lot of content on that for the next few years as we just get, update after update or rumors, because this is something that I have been wanting for years upon years, much like a lot of other Disney fans. And I have a lot of different ideas on where this could go. And I just kind of want to, dive into Tomorrowland as a whole eventually. So you're going to get a lot of Tomorrowland content on the channel. Now, I do want to say the Sunday after that, I'm telling you guys right now, you guys are going to get a very different video. Expect a video where I review One Piece. I have been watching One Piece for the very first time, and it is a journey. I want to document the journey, and since this is called Parks and Popcorn, where I like to occasionally review TV and movies, I'd like to branch out on something that isn't super tied to theme parks. Like, yes, it does have some theme park tie-ins, but it is a TV series that is just incredible, and it might have some theme park tie-ins in the future, but regardless of that, it is a series that I have thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm making my way through it. I think that we're going to be covering the, very first episode all the way to either Alabasta or Skypiea. Currently, I'm watching the Skypiea arc. But hey, if you've never even seen One Piece and you're like, what are you even talking about? What is Alabasta or Skypiea? I encourage you to tune in, because even if you don't want to sit through the show, I do have a lot of interesting points, and maybe you will want to watch the show after I, get done explaining it. We're not going to go episode by episode. We're going to go arc by arc, but it is going to be quite a big analysis, I feel like, and a bigger video on the entire, show and what I've experienced so far and how I feel about the show and the characters and the arcs and the storylines and where I think things are going. And that's going to be something that I'll be updating, sort of regularly on the channel. Whenever I complete a new arc or a saga in the show, I'll make another big video. Don't you worry, because more theme park stuff is coming, because the entire month of September and October is going to be all about haunts and spooky season in the parks. We have lots of stuff like that to cover, so stick around. But most of all, guys, let me know what you guys thought of this year's D23. Did you love it? Did you not like it? Let me know. Peace out, guys. See ya on Sunday.